Chapters like this forever cement my feelings on Jujutsu Kaisen, going as one of the greatest series of our generation. From the elaborate foreshadowing, from the Jujutsu Kaisen openings of the train station with both Yuji and Sukuna, to the further implications that can occur with Sukuna and Yuji, their dynamic is truly something special. But the next step for them is to go north. 236 is a monumental chapter and introduced the concept of stages of life. To become anew, go north, but return to who you are and go south. And as we know, Gojo chose to go south, and why he died being visibly shown in his youthful days where he was the most happy. But Yuji's domain expansion is taken to a different direction, and it's thanks to the help of these amazing accounts that made these connections, so please do show them some love. The train station's name is called Kitakame, which translates to going north, which in essence means a chapter in this series holds something special for the climax of Jujutsu Kaisen. But first I'd like to cover some of the foreshadowing in the series and try to connect what could be in store for these two characters. Firstly, the opening train station, which could be seen as important foreshadowing of the current events we see today. The one that caught me off guard the most was in episode 2 seeing the 6 Buddhist statues, which can be reflective of the Buddhist inspiration of Yuji's character. Yuji's inspiration is a Buddha Vista, who has vowed to not stop until he saved the suffering souls, which is very in character with Itadori. More importantly, the influence of Sukuna's character being Emma, the King of Hell, which is a manifestation of Jizo, which is the Yuji influence. Further tying into how intertwined Yuji and Sukuna are within their character arcs. Going even further with Yuji being sealed with a finger, so literally and metaphorically being connected. But this is the first instance of why them going north could be impactful. It's even shown through the cover page, which I think is pretty cool. Throughout the entire story, Sukuna has rejected the existence of Yuji, with the intention of proving superiority within his ideals. But now Yuji has continuously been able to disprove him and to confront him head on. He now has no choice but to acknowledge Yuji and to validate what he stands for. The idea that two characters embody the theme of love, however their avenues of expressing it is completely different. Sukuna's way of butchering his opponents to show them kindness to top up with acknowledgement in their latter stages. In comparison to Yuji never giving up on people and his constant need to provide relief, to people is quite ironic that intentionally saves a lot of people yet feels guilty to not being able to save them physically. Transfigured humans is probably my favourite aspect of that, with them being brought to peace with their death, whereas in Yuji's perspective he's murdering innocent people. But truly we have set up for my hopes for an extremely important conversation with Yuji and Sukuna, and how their viewpoints in life are so different. Going north is to be born anew, and in Yuji's case it's perfectly replicated with him using a domain expansion. Domain is the expression of oneself, meaning one with a low self-worth could never achieve such a feat, and thematically could be represented as a clashing of self. Not to mention when he performed the domain, the spiral eyes are gone, which could symbolize significant stuff for the future. But let me give you an example. Sukuna, who had the strongest domain expansion, his overwhelming self being able to manifest it into reality, supports the thesis, and we are at the cusp of Yuji becoming something beyond his cognitive mindset. But Yuji's storyline seems easier to piece together, but what could be in store for Sukuna? Well, this entire Kenjaku showdown has shown cracks in Sukuna's armor, and not to mention the cringe Gon become a monster and Meruman became a human. However, there's a lot more focus on the human traits from the all-knowing hedonist. The borderline between curse and human has always been blurred to be respective sides of the same coin, and this has been shown through Sukuna in particular. Just in case you misunderstand me, I don't mean Sukuna is an actual curse, but he embodies a lot of the traits people assume with a curse. Gojo started it with his fight being so impactful that he'd never forget him forever. Kashima confronted him and glaringly showed hypocrisy on his behalf, because if you're content with living life as it is, turning your body into a cursed object is quite contradictory, no matter how much he tries to twist it. Then the chapter that I have said in multiple times was the nail in the coffin for Sukuna to lose is 248. In the midst of acknowledging Yuji, he decided he would break his ideal. No more of playing with humans till he loses interest. No more to the benefit of his stature, but to do the Mahito and make them lose their willpower. The entire progress of this entire arc has slowly chipped away at Sukuna physically and mentally, and if this isn't the end for Sukuna, then it's time for him to become new. I think this is perfectly demonstrated with the train analogy that Yuji is taking him on, and the series starts with Yuji and Sukuna, and the traditional sense of Jujutsu will end with them too. It kind of feels thematically sound that the merger will be a new beginning, something we haven't seen in Jujutsu, and more importantly, let's spin back to the trains. The symbolism for trains is to represent new beginnings. The moment dreams, ideals, etc. all stop while you wait to go to your destination. But in this case, this is North, and a city in Japan. Kinda fitting that Yuji is the one leading him to that destination. That could mean a couple things that I'm theorizing. The separation of Sukuna and Yuji, which is why Yuji perceives Sukuna in his Yuji form, the reflection of himself, and the form he's most accustomed to. It would be somewhat interesting because Sukuna acknowledged his time in Megami's body is very close to ending with the threat of Angel. It could be a nice tying in to really bring it back to how it originally started, with them being mirrors of each other. The second, and this is where we really start to theorize, and Gege please I need it more than ever, and that is the Cursed Realm. Jisu's meant to be the protector of 6 realms, and not to mention this isn't like the airport scene, so Gege asked for one favor, the Cursed Realm. Kenjaku's character is also based on the Buddha Visa that was able to connect other realms and lead lost souls to Nirvana. Ironically, feels as if that will that's being inherited from Kenjaku is Yuji, as his character inspiration is very similar. Not to mention their character is the first to mention the idea of the Cursed Realm, and Uru even mentioned the concept of the underworld. The editor note says a fight in an unknown place, so there is a potential we could be in some different level of consciousness, especially as Sukuna be entering people's death scenes, which is already an anomaly within the series, so it could explain that very well. There's also elements of rebirth already established with Sukuna's twin, Druve having a second incarnation, and other aspects within the series that I don't think it's so far-fetched for the person who has a great understanding of the soul to connect to a wider consciousness. Third is what I'm seeing the most, that Sukuna is dead. To me, it doesn't make sense because he's been trying to hit the barrier between Megami and Sukuna soul that I'd assume would be more stripped away, but let's entertain this idea. It spookily paralleled Gojo's death with the first off-screening of the attack, and the moment they recover, the reverse curse technique seems to be on a high, and then they are stopped. But in my opinion, it wouldn't be consistent with their goal, which is the key reason why I think we see Megami in the train station as a visual representation of them moving to a new destination, which I think would be pretty cool. The idea of going north is great, and in my opinion we see what will be a key change for both Yuji and Sukuna that we haven't seen before. We've been put into a situation where both characters are about to embark on a journey, and I think it's very important that they both have some sense of conversation to really build up through that entire dynamic. Throughout the series, we actually haven't seen them interact extensively, bar the moment they had that internal conflict when he was setting up the Chain. So having a moment of them really having a heart-to-heart while freeing Megami at the same time, I think is very, very interesting. And then the most important thing, which I think everybody's thinking in terms of going anew, is the merger. The merger is supposed to represent something new in Jujutsu Kaisen. The two characters who, in essence, the series has been wrapped around, whether it's figuratively or narratively, even being called the Eye of the Storm. It could be very nicely done if this was the key steps before the next stage of evolution. And I think there's a lot of pathways we can go through. I think this chapter in itself was really, really cold and added a nice concept which I think would be important for both Sukuna and Yuji's character. With Yuji, I think this is a moment of time where we're going to have him really assure himself, because not only is his inspiration of leading others to enlightenment, and as we've seen throughout this whole entire clash, everyone has had their moments of acknowledgement from Sukuna or different manners in terms they've grown significantly, and the latter stages really has focused in on Yuji, which I think is very important and very consistent with how Gege writes Yuji as a character in the end. It's very delayed gratification, and now with the moment that he's finally really got to a moment to get a jump on Sukuna, I think we're in for some very interesting aspects. One thing I really want to touch on is the fact that the domain expansion wasn't like any other ones. Granted, I don't think it's like the death scenes like we've seen in before, because most of them are either with people they care about before or they're on their own, and even the usual visual representation is a little different than before. But most importantly, I think there might be a nasty twist that will be coming next week, simply because he didn't really show us a domain expansion in that one picture, so I'm kind of interested to see what could happen to occur. Overall, I think Yuji's domain expansion is going to be cold. I think it is something to do with either the split soul dismantle, which he's just used as a short hit, or maybe something extensive that we haven't seen to be able to connect people, especially with how the representation of his character. I don't think he's going to necessarily save Sukuna in the realm of actually redeem him, because, well, he hates him and it wouldn't be thematically consistent, specifically with someone such as Sukuna's character. However, I do think it's going to be something pivotal that will actually have a significant life change for both Yuji and Sukuna's character, and I can't wait to see the future events of what's going to come with these coming chapters.